Hello and welcome to another tutorial on the Boodlebag platform. Today we're going to cover searching shared spaces and making access requests. So let's get started. There are two ways that you can make searches of the Boodlebag platform for shared spaces. The first is for people that do not have a Boodlebag account. You can come onto the Boodlebag main page, and we provide the ability for you to be able to browse shared spaces. So under Flexible Business Space Rentals, if you click on the Browse Spaces button, this will take you to a page where you can put in your search criteria to search for spaces that suit your needs. You'd want to put in a zip code to search in. Now, even though you're putting in a zip code, the search is going to only use that for proximity. So it would show you spaces that match your usage that are close to that proximity by zip code. Then you would want to put in what type of use you want. Here we suggest that you start with single words, and based on how wide the search returns, you can then put in phrases. And you can put in multiple words and multiple phrases and then slim that down to make your search more specific. So here I would put in just the word dance. Now to enter multiple words or phrases, you want to hit return after each word or phrase. If you enter the words as just a string of words and then say search, it's going to presume that you're searching for a phrase that has all of those words. So for example, if you put in dance, fitness, yoga, it's going to look for spaces that match exactly this phrase. So if I say search, you see we find nothing. If I change it instead to dance, yoga, fitness, you can see a couple of spaces have that phrase. And then if I change it to dance classes, and I hit return. Again, remember you always want to hit return. And I say search. You can see only one space has that phrase. But if instead I said dance, and I hit return, and I said classes, and I hit return, and I said lessons, I hit return, and then I said search, you can see we have more results now because it's looking for all spaces that have dance, classes, or fitness or lessons as part of their search criteria. So what we suggest is you start with single words, and then depending on how wide the search becomes, then trim it down to using fewer words or phrases. Now, when you're doing searches, there are two types of public use spaces. There are the ones that are shared and the ones that are for single tenants. In our earlier tutorial on creating spaces, we went over the different types of spaces. So you might want to go back and review that tutorial if you're unfamiliar with the different types of spaces. Now, if you're looking for single tenant spaces only, then you would click that so it will only return you single tenant spaces. If you're looking for shared spaces only, then you would click there and it would only return shared spaces only. But here we're going to look for both shared spaces and single tenant spaces. So now I would click search. And if I scroll down, I will then see all the locations that have, and all the spaces in each location that meet my search criteria. So in this particular case, there are 2 locations and 3 spaces in proximity to the zip code that I put in that meet my search criteria. You can, from this view, click on the images to be able to get a bigger picture, to be able to see the space a little bit better. Now, of course, this is just a test system, so all the pictures are the same picture that we use just for demonstrating the functionality of the system. But typically, you would have all the different businesses showing pictures of their own location and spaces, so you could get a sense of what those spaces look like. Now, also in this view, you would see pertinent information that could inform you as to whether or not this is a suitable space for your use. So it provides, first of all, the indication that this is a shared space. It's not a single tenant space. So you know, if you're going to be renting the space, you're going to be sharing it with other businesses and probably also the owner of that space using the space itself. The square footage, the booking capacity. Again, we went over all of these elements in the tutorial on creating spaces. So I'm not going to go over what all of these mean. If you're unfamiliar with any terms here, please go to our YouTube site and look at our playlist for tutorials and look for the tutorial for creating shared spaces. And you'll see the explanation of what all of these values mean. You'll see the comparative hourly rate. And what the comparative hourly rate is the system calculates based on how an individual merchant does their pricing for spaces, what that would amount to on an hourly basis for the minimum charge. So depending on what the minimum charge is, it might be for less than an hour. If it's just exactly an hour, then whatever that minimum charge is, that's what the hourly rate would be. But if it's less than or more than, we compute it for you so you can be able to compare with other spaces that you find, which is, better in terms of price. And then minimum charge will also compute based on how they do their pricing, so for whatever minutes you book, what the minimum amount you're going to pay for those minutes. The cancellation policy, and then some description of that space. Now, of course, again, this is just a test system, so we just put in some text there that is not really representative of what a business will typically put for their spaces. Typically, they'll want to put a lot more information that gives you a better description of the space and any rules or regulations that they have, anything that would make it more clear to you what the space is about and what makes it attractive. Now, once you've browsed a few of the spaces, any that you find interesting, you can click on the More Info button. And when you do that, for the Browse view, we require for you to get detailed information about the space that you have an account. So at this point, you would then indicate whether you have an account or not. If you do not have an account, you click on No and you click on Continue. And we just tell you we're going to help you create an account now, and let's get started. When you click on Continue from here, it's going to take you into the workflow for creating an account. And when that's finished, it's going to bring you back here and into the space that you just indicated you wanted more information about, and it will take you in there so you could see that space and get more information about the space. If you haven't created an account and you want to learn more about creating accounts, we do have a tutorial on creating accounts that goes over all the different pieces of account creation, so you could become familiar with the workflow for creating an account. So definitely look on our YouTube site and be able to get yourself familiar with creating accounts if you don't already have an account on the Boodlebag platform. And in particular, for accessing shared spaces, you need what we call a merchant account. Even though you might be an individual renting spaces for your own social or other uses, you'll need a merchant account, which would just be under your name, first name, last name, as opposed to a business name. Now I'm going to use an account that already exists to browse this particular space for more information. So I'm going to click on cancel here, so I can go back and then say yes for having an account and click on continue. Now it's going to ask me to log into my account, and I'm going to use one of the accounts that we created earlier on in another tutorial. And once I put that in, it takes me into that particular space. I can see the merchant that has this space, and then you can get some information about this merchant. Now, of course, this is just a test account, so we just put in a little bit of text here, but it's nothing really specific. But typically, you would have a lot of information about the business, what their motto is, what they do, and things like that. And then we also have here the location, so you have a sense, a reminder of where the space is located, just to make sure that you are comfortable with the location and that suits your needs. We also have the space name. Many locations have multiple spaces, so you know which space within that location that you are interested in renting. And then some of the other information that you had previously is also on here. Plus now the pricing, so you can see what they charge. Now spaces typically have multiple prices, so they would have multiple tiers that they have priced, so you can get bulk rate discounts. In this particular case, there's just one rate priced at 60 minutes. So anything from 0 to 60 minutes is $15, and the next 0 to 60 minutes is another $15, and so on and so forth. Now, if you do like the space, you can, now that you're logged in, you can place a request to access the space. If you place a request to access the space, a message would be sent to the space owner, so you can get access. Actually, let's do that. So let's say place request. It actually takes you to the screen where you can actually type in a message. So we're going to say, we will like to rent your space. Now, typically we suggest that you put more things in there, like who you are, what your business does, how you're going to use the space, you know, maybe even hours that you would like, things like that. Now, typically the spaces would also show you if there are restrictions on use times, but in this particular case, the space does not have restrictions on when you can rent it. But if there are restrictions on the previous page, you would have seen that when the restrictions are for use. But they're none, so you can state if you want here, you know, additional information, including what times you want and anything about yourself and your business. And then you click on Send Request, and the merchant will get notified that you've requested access to their space. And later on, I'll show you how the merchant would approve your request. And once they approve your request, you then would have access to the space. And that's it. So now you have a request that's gone in for the space. And as you can see here, now it says request pending. So you now know that your request has been sent, and it's just waiting for the merchant that owns that space to approve you. At any point in time, if you find another space and maybe this merchant is taking a while to approve your request, you can rescind the request, in which case the merchant will no longer see that as a request that is pending approval, and you can move on to a different space that meets your needs. Now, from the same page, you can go to where you can learn more about shared spaces if you don't already, if you haven't already done that, or you can just close and go back to the location for this particular space. Many times there are other spaces here, so you might be interested in looking at some of the spaces that this merchant has. In this particular case, this merchant only has one space. So if you're all done, you can then click on Learn More About Shared Spaces, which takes you back to the main page, not the main page, but general page of the Boodlebag platform for shared spaces. And from here, you can go back to searches if you want, and you can search for other spaces. So this is the first way that you can go about searching the Boodlebag platform. But this method is more tailored for individuals that do not already have a merchant account on Boodlebag. We recommend that if you do have a merchant account on Boodlebag, that you actually use your merchant account to do searches. It's a little bit better to do searches from there. So I'm going to log in so you can see what that looks like. And now this is an account that has the Boodlebag shared spaces renter feature. So I'm going to go into shared spaces, and notice how this particular renter does not have any locations. So the way that you would add locations, because they only have the feature to rent, they don't have the feature to create spaces themselves. So they would search shared spaces, and we let you know what our, give you this information to ensure that you're aware that charges may occur when you rent spaces. Now, renting a space, having the account to rent a space is free. We don't charge you to have the account and to be able to then go in and search spaces. You only get a charge when you have active spaces that you're renting. So if you have active spaces that you're renting, then there's a subscription fee to get access to the Boodlebag platform. And that subscription fee only kicks in once the merchant accepts you for renting. So when you put in a request and a merchant then accepts you, at that instant we prorate your subscription fee and then charge that at that instant so that your subscription begins then. So be aware that once you get approved, you would then have a charge on your card and file to then kick off your subscription for the Boodlebag service that you have. So here I'm going to say we accept the rates, and we now go into a very similar screen as we saw earlier on, where you can then do searches. But notice how we have a few more things that we can then also search based on: square footage, the minimum or maximum, price range too. You can search in that in addition to single tenant and shared spaces as search criteria. So again, here I'm just going to put in a zip code, and then also say that I want this for dance. And you can say things like dance lessons, dance lesson or dance lessons as your search phrase. But anytime you put in a phrase, it becomes more specific. So we usually suggest you start with single words, general, and you can put in multiple words because it's going to find matches that have any of those words. But then if you get too many results returned, then we then suggest that you start trimming down your search word criteria to make it more specific. So here I'm just going to say dance again and say search. And then I go down here, I can see that we have several spaces that we've searched. Now you can see here that this particular merchant actually has 2 spaces they've already put in requests for. So you can see that they have requests pending, and the merchant that owns those spaces, in this case Lisa's Dance Business and Mary's Dance Studio, those 2 spaces haven't approved the requests. You can rescind a request from here, and I'm just going to do that so you see what that looks like. I'm going to say rescind request, and as soon as you rescind the request, you can see no longer says request pending. So you can then resend a request if you want or not. Now from here you can also say more info, which takes you to a similar view that we had before, where you can see spaces that, more information about the space. In this case, this is a space that you have a request pending on, which was this one. If we go to one that you don't have a request pending on, you'll see that you can make a request from here. So this is an example of a space where they have tiered pricing. So for 45 minutes, it's $25. For 135 minutes, which is 3 sets of 45, you get a little bit of a discount. And that's something that merchants can do to entice you to use more of their space, because you get a discount for the more hours that you use their space for. So this is another location where you can do searches from. Now, we always have your learning link here where you can pick different tutorials to learn from. So you can always go in here and pick your tutorials if there's information that you are unsure about while you're doing any work. So let's see here. So that's how you search for spaces and how you put in requests. So what we're going to now do is show you how the merchant would approve your request once you've made a request. So we have Mary's Dance Studio that has a request. So let's log out from Ken, who is a renter, and log in as Mary. And the way, as a space owner, what you'll do is you'll get an email that will notify you that a request has come in to rent a particular space that you own. So be sure to note down what the space name is and the location. And you'll then come in to your locations and spaces, and you go to that specific location. You click on the edit link there, and based on the space name that you saw in the email, you'll go to that particular space and click on the edit. And of course, we always tell you that if you make any changes, that rates may apply. So you just say accept. And then if you go down to the bottom, you'll see where you have pending access requests. You'll open up that access request by clicking on that icon right there. And when you click on that icon, you'll then be able to see information about that particular request. You can approve it, you can deny it, or you can just close it and come back to it later. You'll see the renter's name, either their business name or their personal name. You'll see the information, the message that they put in, which will tell you how they're going to use the space, and you'll see the contact information. You can then email them, call them, interview them, and get a sense of, they are a individual or business that you want to rent your space to. Now, this down here is very important, both for you as a renter to understand and for space owners to also understand. You always want to have a conversation with your renters about the billing frequency you're going to specify for them. So you have 3 choices: a daily billing, weekly billing, or monthly billing. And depending on which it is that you choose, the system would count how many minutes are used in that period and then apply the rates that you specified for your space. So for this, I'm going to choose daily billings, meaning that Ken Renter business is going to be billed daily for their use of this space. Now, you optionally also have the ability to specify specific bill rates for Ken Renter. You can enter any duration you want here and a price, and you'll now have customized and individualized rates that is just for Ken, in which case it's going to bypass the general rates that we have for the space and use the rates that are specifically specified for Ken. And then here I'm going to say approve. And once you approve Ken, you can now see that Ken has now been moved into approved access. At any point in time, as a space owner, you can always click on that and go in and see the details of a renter that you've approved. And if things are not working out, you can always suspend their access. If they had any bookings in your space, those bookings will automatically get canceled, and they'll get notified, and the customers will also get notified. So that's how you would search spaces and make access requests. And again, remember that you have two paths to making access requests for searching. One is through the main page site from Boodlebag or within your account once you log in. So you can log in and then get access that way. Okay, so we are done with the tutorial for searching and making space access requests. We're going to have additional tutorials coming up. In our next tutorial, we're going to go over making bookings and reserving spaces. So see you in our next tutorial.